Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we're talking the aura of Vulkan He'stan, the price he pays as Forgefather. Spoiler warning to begin, as today we will be referencing events from the Warhammer 40k story Firedrake by author Nick Kyme. As always, I really recommend you read the stories for yourself first without spoilers, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. For the Salamanders chapter, the Forgefather is a position that's been appointed since their Primarch's disappearance. The holder of the position bears the responsibility of finding the lost artifacts of Vulkan wherever they may be. For the chapter, the artifacts represent a trial that if they can somehow find and retrieve all 9, they will be rewarded with their Primarch's return. As a result, the Forgefather position is the most revered in the chapter, for he represents the ultimate salvation, the reunification with Vulkan. The Forgefather is viewed as an almost mythical being by the chapter, and even sheds his own forename on assuming the position, embracing Vulkan. As such, the current Forgefather is of course Vulkan He'stan. The Forgefather spends much of his time away from the chapter, existing only for the quest he has been given. He is a breed apart, dedicated solely to this endeavour, and the salamander chosen for the role must be of exceptional spirit and resolve, for this is a quest they can never cease. He'stan was the 4th company captain before being appointed Forgefather, and though only 4 artifacts remain to be found, it's undoubted He'stan's task is surely the hardest yet of any Forgefather before him, for never has the galaxy been so assailed by darkness. You could understand with that in mind why He'stan perhaps could be struggling with his current quest, or feeling the weight of his burden more heavily upon his shoulders. Yet, somehow, I don't think he would be. And I was particularly intrigued to see a more simple, human struggle facing the Forgefather within the novel Firedrake. Now, through the events of Firedrake, Vulkan He'stan feels drawn to return to his homeworld of Nocturne, sensing that his presence will be needed in upcoming events for the chapter. And you can sense the conflicting emotions within the Forgefather throughout. In being dedicated to his quest, he almost feels a reluctance at not being out there in the galaxy somewhere all the time. And though he loves laying eyes on his homeworld once again, and longs to be around his brothers once more, there's an awkwardness, as in becoming the Forgefather, his one-time brothers simply don't look at him the same as they used to. All save one, Tushan, his chapter master. When He'stan returns to his homeworld, he returns to Prometheus first. And this isn't some reunion in Tushan's council chamber. The regent sat as the tribal king upon his throne. They instead meet in a viewing chamber, with the Forgefather looking out to his homeworld below, as he feels the aura of Tushan arrive beside him. And there's a great little line of how Tushan has an aura unlike any other. A sense of indomitable will that He'stan had never sensed in any other salamander. And he's filled with a great sense of pride, and yet sorrow, that he knows there are no 2 greater salamanders out there than himself and his chapter master. And that may sound a little confusing at first, but what He'stan means, at least in my opinion, is that of course he takes great pride in his own role, his own duty, confident in his own abilities to achieve it. And for his chapter master, who despite being relatively young when he assumed the position, has proven himself countless times over. Again, He'stan can sense that resolve, that uniqueness within him just by his presence alone. The sorrow is merely because there should be countless heroes of this renown. The chapter should be full of them. There was a time with the legions when that was the case. Yet as the galaxy grows darker, these figures become ever harder to find. The sorrow He'stan feels is merely because he wants more for his chapter. Yet as long as he and Tushan exist, there will always remain hope. There is no pomp in this reunion. There is no ceremony. Despite being the two most important members of the chapter, it is just the two of them. Tushan has come alone. And does He'stan bow before his chapter master, his regent? Does Tushan honour his Forgefather the same? No. Tushan simply slaps a hand on He'stan's shoulder. Not a chapter master greeting his Forgefather, but a brother greeting a brother. There's no reverence in Tushan's eyes, no wonder, no awe. Most likely because he alone of all the chapter can understand what it means to be apart. What it means to have that burden of responsibility alone. No, Tushan may not be away from his fellow chapter most of the time, such as He'stan is. But make no mistake about it, as chapter master, Tushan is alone. The two of them, alone in all of the chapter, share a unique bond that none other can understand. And let's compare this to the presence and effect He'stan has when he greets the rest of his chapter, as there's a moment that takes place not long after his reunion with Tushan. All eyes turned from Praetor to the figure that came amongst them. Awesome as their veteran sergeant was, he could not command the same attention, nor would he ever wish to. Sugan had never met the Forgefather. He had never fought by his side. Vulkan He'stan bore the name of the Primarch. He prosecuted their father's sacred duty. To be before such a legend was humbling. His deeds were almost as legendary as his trappings. Kisar was the name of the creature Vulkan had slain for his mantle. That magnificent cloak of scale hung proudly from the Forgefather's shoulders. In his mailed fist he carried Vulkan's spear, a power blade of incredible potency from Nocturne's halcyon days. The other hand was encased in the gauntlet of the Forge, an arcane weapon capable of summoning fire. But it was not these weapons, nor He'stan's superbly wrought armour, that empowered him. It was his presence. There was something about him. Sugan felt it palpably, that resonated with mystery and unknowable wisdom. But there was distance too, a separation necessitated by the isolation of his quest. In many ways, the Forgefather was the closest link the chapter had to their long-lost Primarch. All who came within He'stan's aura felt it. And that is the aura of Vulkan He'stan. It's easy to see why He'stan longs for his lost brotherhood. It's easy to see why he feels awkward returning to his chapter, described and seen as the closest link to their Primarch that they have. How on earth can He'stan live up to such a thing? No Marine could. It's undeniable He'stan is a legend and hero in his own right, and in a way, he is deserving of such respect. But you can't help but feel there's almost a longing in the eyes of his fellow Marines, in that while yes they see him, the Forgefather, in a way they also see Vulkan too. And here, even though this is the Firedrakes, the experienced and hardened first company of the chapter, they all still bow their heads and kneel to the Forgefather, almost asking for his blessing. It verges on worship, and I guess in a way it is. Tushan, while their lord, their chapter master, remains very much the man he is. However, the Forgefather, in donning the mantle of Kisar, the legendary Drakescale cloak, in taking up Vulkan's spear, and the gauntlet of the Forge, taking up the Primarch's name, the Forgefather becomes something else entirely. More a symbol than a man. And He'stan's reaction is telling. The Forgefather's eyes narrowed. He was uncomfortable at the gesture, but concealed it flawlessly. With Tushan, he had experienced a returning bond of brotherhood. Now, he felt as aloof and distant as he had ever been whilst exploring the galaxy for the Nine. Again, it's no wonder He'stan yearns for the brotherhood he used to have, because he's become a symbol, not a man. Here, in his own words, it's Tushan alone who sees him as the man he is, and the man alone, who gives him the belonging he seeks amongst the chapter. It's a really cool aspect for the chapter. Its two most important characters sharing that close bond of brotherhood, able to relate in a way the rest of the chapter simply can't. And it's a great highlight of the Vulkan-esque qualities that Tushan embodies. Seeing the man in the Forgefather, seeing the brother before anything else. Reminds me a bit of that scene in the Heresy when Vulkan reunites with Rogel. You know I love that scene. Rogel, a Primarch, Lord of the Imperial Fists, Praetorian of Terror and Lord Commander of the Imperium. And Vulkan just sees his brother. Except he gives Rogel a big old bro hug rather than Tushan's pat on the shoulder. But I digress. For the Firedrakes, He'stan would ask his brothers to rise, and to treat him as a brother, not some legendary myth. And there's a touching moment where Praetor, leader of the Firedrake, stands, stating, "We see the Primarch in you," Praetor explained. It is hard not to offer genuflection when faced with such a legacy. "But you are my brother," he added, extending his gauntleted hand. "And I bid you welcome." Evidence here again that the chapter does see more than simply the man before them. That He'stan does have the impossible task of bearing the Primarch's legacy. However too, that salamander nature remains true. The confirmation that, yes, we do see the Primarch, and yes, it's hard not to bow, to give honour to what you represent. But He'stan, the man within the armour, the man who wields the Primarch's artifacts, you will always be our brother. It's the acceptance that He'stan needs. It's the belonging he desires. And in knowing that behind the reverence, behind the worship or awe within their eyes, there will always remain that heartbeat of brotherhood. And for me, as long as He'stan knows that, he will always be able to bear his responsibility. He will always find the strength. No, he will never simply be He'stan again, to any other than Tushan. The rest of the chapter will always see the symbol first and foremost. But within that, here with the words of Praetor, He'stan can at least get that measure of reassurance he needs, that he will always be a brother of the Salamander's chapter. And that would be never more needed than in the trials they face now, within the current embattled galaxy, in which Vulkan He'stan continues his search for the 9 artifacts of Vulkan. But as always everyone, what do you think? Are you surprised that He'stan feels so apart from the rest of his chapter? Are you surprised that he misses the simple brotherhood he used to have? In donning the aspect of the Primarch in some ways, is it a surprise the rest of the chapter struggles to see the man within? Or equally, is it a surprise that Tushan doesn't? Is He'stan's brotherhood with his chapter master vital for the future of the chapter? And do you think the words of Praetor, the confirmation that he will always be their brother, would give He'stan the resolve of spirit he needs to face down the challenges of the current Imperium? As always everyone, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow, and if you enjoyed this particular vid then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.